Sitrep podcast, where we discuss military historical wargaming. This is Oriskany Jim, and in this video we're returning to Desert Storm, part of our ongoing 30th anniversary look at the Gulf War of 1991. We'll be zooming out just a little in this one, to the full width and breadth of the command tactical level of wargaming. My hope is to provide just a glimpse of the real scale and scope at which modern combined arms warfare really takes place. The system we'll be using is Toscash Miniatures' Tactical Command Middle East Gulf War expansion of the Avalon Hill Panzer Blitz World War II system. Our battle du jour is El Jaber in southwestern Kuwait. Here we saw the 1st Marine Division's final breach of the Iraqi defensive belts in occupied Kuwait, met by a pretty sizable local counterattack by elements of the Iraqi 5th Mechanized and 3rd Armored Divisions. So the date is 25 February 1991, the second day of Desert Storm's full-scale ground invasion. As we can see, the coalition has started its massive left hook into Iraq and occupied Kuwait. Zooming in on this green rectangle here, we come to southern Kuwait and elements of 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. That's going to be 1st Marine Division, 2nd Marine Division, and the Tiger Brigade of the U.S. Army's 2nd Armored Division. We also see their initial advance into Kuwait, where they meet two main Iraqi defense belts. They reached that first belt before the ground war officially started, and then on G-Day, they punched holes completely through that first belt and covered the ground to the second belt against token resistance. However, as the Marines reached that second belt, through the night they began to sort of force breaches through that second line, and they were getting ready to exploit these breaches and make a major breakthrough on day 2 of the invasion. However, they were strongly counterattacked by elements of the Iraqi 3rd Armored and 5th Mechanized Division here at the Battle of El Jaber. So that second green rectangle there is going to show the extent of today's game table. For our force composition, we have some pretty good information here. We've got some primary sources that show where everybody was and what they were doing. We're going to be focusing on the vanguard elements of 1st Marine Division here. We're looking at Task Force Ripper, Task Force Papa Bear, and they're screened by elements of Task Force Shepard. We also have pretty good ideas of what Marine artillery regiments, we'll talk about 11th and 12th regiments, were supporting this attack, what task forces each artillery unit was actually supporting, and a pretty detailed itemization of what the makeup of Task Force Papa Bear and Task Force Ripper really were. We also have some pretty good information on Iraqi forces makeup. We have their tables of organization and equipment here. So we're able to build a pretty good picture, guys, as far as what forces we're going to have on our table. So here is a look at today's battlefield. Over here to the west we have the El Jaber Air Base, a big terrain feature and key objective for the day. And over here to the east we have the Jaber-Burqan oil fields and the nearby town of Subasaya. We're also looking at that 2nd Iraqi defense berm that we were talking about earlier, along with 1st Marine Division's breach through that berm, again made on the night of 24 to 25 February 1991. Another terrain feature we're looking at here is called the Amir's Farm. This is actually where 1st Marine Division had their forward headquarters on the day of the battle. In all, each hex here is about 250 meters across. So if we assume 1-inch hexes on a physical table, we're talking about a scale of about 1 to 10,000. The board is about 17 kilometers across. And it also bears noting that if each hex was on a 15 millimeter table, it would be an 8 foot by 8 foot table. And there's about 2,800 hexes on this table. So yeah, we're looking at a pretty big sandbox here. Let's take a look at force composition for our U.S. Marine units. Now I won't go into everything here because we'd be here all day. Suffice it to say that each counter here is roughly a platoon, section, or battery, so figure 5 to 6 vehicles and between 30 and 50 men. The Marines are looking at their old favorite, the AAV-7 Amtrak, or Amphibious Assault Vehicle, carrying what basically equates to 2 battalions of Marine rifles. We also have a collection of Marine tank units that when all kind of stitched together like it was in Task Force Ripper, we wind up with the equivalent of about a full Marine tank battalion. Now, it does bear noting that the Marines are still using the M60A1 main battle tank. They're not using the M1 Abrams that the Army is using at the same time. This will make Marine armor kind of weak, but again, it's kind of what was there at the time, so historical accuracy. We then have some more transport units bringing on more Marine support, including engineers. Lots of engineers. Again, the Marines were breaching a Iraqi berm defense system here, and this is when you really want engineers. We have combat engineers, we have support engineers, we have all kinds of engineers, along with all kinds of other support units, headquarters units. Again, I won't get into everything here. But one thing I would like to kind of point out super fast is this collection of LAV-25s and a mixed company of Marine rifles, or Marine infantry. This is specifically Bravo Company of Task Force Shepard, which was detached out of Task Force Shepard and into Task Force Ripper for today's battle. They're going to play a very key role, not only historically, but also in today's game. A little bit further down, we're also looking at the rest of Task Force Shepard. Again, I won't go into everything here, guys. And on top of that, this isn't really rocket science. We have a very detailed itemization, a very detailed itemized list of what Marine units were actually there on the day. We just convert this line by line into actual game language, and we wind up with a nice, accurate, or at least a good estimation of what the Marines had there on the day. We're also looking at Task Force Papa Bear, which was sort of a twin task force, sort of on the Marine right wing. More or less similar to Task Force Ripper, not an exact clone, but actually pretty close. And then of course we have some support assets, because why not? We have tons of Marine artillery. Marines love their towed artillery, specifically the M777 155mm howitzer. 3 full battalions. Again, each counter here is a battery, so yeah, a lot of guns firing from off the table to hit Iraqi targets. We're also looking at some Marine air support in the form of 3 flights of FA-18 Hornet strike fighters. These are pretty powerful units, obviously. They only get to use their main weapons once, however, and then, like most airstrikes, they've expended their ordnance and they have to leave the table. And of course, we also have 3rd Marine Air Wing with a fair amount of AH-1W Super Cobra attack helicopter gunships. Now, unfortunately, we do have to have some bad guys on our table. So heading over here to the Iraqis, we're looking at 3 main brigades in their force. Specifically, 26th Armored Brigade of 5th Mechanized Division. We then have 22nd Mechanized Brigade of the 5th Mechanized Division, and 15th Mechanized Brigade of the 3rd Armored Division. So, as far as Iraqi makeup goes, we do know that the Armored Brigade did have some T-62s on the battlefield on the given day. An Iraqi Armored Brigade basically is built out of 3 battalions of tanks, 1 battalion of motorized infantry in BTR-60s, that's these units down here, and a Mechanized Brigade more or less reverses that ratio. So we've generally built that here with the footnote that these are badly under strength. Now, these units have been bombed very heavily for 5 weeks, and all of these units, 5th Mechanized Division and 3rd Armored Division, were involved in the Battle of El Kafji, 29 January to 1 February 1991. So they've already been in a massive battle once. They got the hell kicked out of them already, and they've been bombed. So there's a lot of Iraqi forces on the table, however they are pretty badly under strength. We've got some light anti-aircraft, we've got some anti-tank missiles, a lot of heavy mortar support and division-level artillery battalions. So yeah, there's a little bit of, again, badly under strength, but there's a lot of them. So definitely dangerous, nevertheless. Here is our table set up with initial deployments. These are the approximate historical positions of these different units on the day of the battle. So the Marines start off with their forward headquarters, like we said earlier, here at Amir's farm. Then we have Task Force Ripper in this general area. We're looking at Task Force Papa Bear over here on their wing, like I said before. And then the remnants of Task Force Shepard. Task Force Shepard hasn't been damaged so much as it's been steadily taken apart by the division commander. Every time the division commander needs another unit, they're taking it out of Task Force Shepard. So there's not much left of Task Force Shepard, but they are screening the General Marine Advance. This is the terrain that the Marines control. They've made, again, that attack through the breach, and they're now executing a giant right hook. They're trying to get behind El Jaber Air Base. And that's when the Iraqis make their big counterattack. So again, Task Force Shepard is in front, Task Force Ripper, Task Force Papa Bear and the main Marine forward headquarters right here. However, this is when the Iraqis decided to join the fray, and again, we're looking at their main attack, which is 26th Armored Brigade, 5th Mechanized Division, coming down here out of the north. Looking at 15th Mechanized Brigade, 3rd Armored Division, and then 22nd Mechanized Brigade, 5th Mechanized Division. So this is mostly 5th Mechanized Division's part of the sandbox, so to speak. However, again, they are being reinforced by 1 brigade out of 3rd Armored Division. So now it's time to kick this pig. This is the game underway at the end of turn 1. So the Iraqis are technically the attackers. They begin their game by coming out of the north, again in those 3 axes of advance that we discussed earlier, and meeting a lot of Marine opportunity fire as they make their attack. So no big surprise here, but the Iraqis are already taking some extremely heavy casualties. Again, we're talking about T-62s, T-55s, and BTR-60s up against Marine tow launchers, up against Marine artillery, up against Marine tank fire, M60s with 105mm rifles. It's a bad day for a lot of people in the Iraqi tank force. However, the Iraqis are scoring some local successes. I'm going to zoom in on one of them super fast here. So over here on the extreme Marine wing, we are looking at, holy crap, yeah, look at this. All these yellow lines, by the way, are actual lines of sight, lines of fire. You'll notice that there's no Marines in the hexes where the units were fired. That's because the Marines have an opportunity to fire and then move half their distance using the split move and fire rule. So that's why the table might look a little weird. But that's where the Marines were when they took their shot. They then subsequently moved, and here is where the Iraqis were when they were started taking hits. They pretty much sent their entire T-55 battalion here of 22nd Mechanized Brigade out of the north, out of this town Subasaya here. They came around the Marine wing, and they did manage to disperse 1 Marine rifle platoon over here. That's not good news. And they managed to kill 1 platoon of empty AAV-7s. So yeah, they may have lost, the kill ratio might be 20-1, but they have managed to kill a Marine unit. Now, a quick word about the victory conditions here in Tactical Combat Middle East. They are absurdly asymmetrical. For every unit the Marines lose, they lose at least 5, if not 10, if not 25 scenario points, depending on what kind of unit it is. When they get so much as pinned down, they lose a victory point. They also cannot fire artillery at any of these urban hexes, or else 1/2 of the damage is applied as Iraqi victory points. Again, the Marines have to really keep an eye on their collateral damage. And the Iraqis only lose 1 point for every unit lost. So the Iraqis can get tabled. In fact, they probably will get tabled. But if they kill as few as 3 or 4 Marine units, or if they force the Marines to drop too much artillery or airstrikes on some of these urban hexes, they will win the game. They will lose the battle, but they very easily, the Iraqi player can totally win this game. And with 1 Marine unit killed, again, down here on the extreme wing, let me tell you something, guys. They're already well on their way to victory. The score at the end of turn 1, but believe it or not, right now, the Iraqi player is winning the game. Recovering from that initial sting, the Marines are now working on containing these Iraqi thrusts here on their left wing and here along their center. They've pretty much shut down that Iraqi thrust here on their extreme right wing. In fact, Task Force Papa Bear has redeployed its M60 tank battalion around to hit the town of El Subasaya from the inside flank. However, the Iraqis are still doing pretty well, believe it or not. The other big Iraqi threat on top of their tanks that the Marines faced on this day was their artillery. Iraqi artillery was nothing to sneeze at when it decided to fire. Well, they're firing now, and they have knocked out another empty Amtrak platoon down there, pretty much in the center of the battlefield. So that's another big stack of victory points to the Iraqi player. It's costing them T-55s, T-62s, and BTRs by the shovelful. But again, with every Marine unit that they actually managed to kill, they're earning up to 5, 10, or again, depending on the type of unit, up to 25 times the victory point modifier, or the victory point bonus to their own side. The Marines are, however, also bringing on some of their own artillery on the table. That's these green artillery markers that we see here. They're calling in some more fire missions, now that the Marines have a clear idea of where the Iraqis are. And they're also bringing in some air power. So let me zoom in on just a little bit here. Yeah, there's that amp track platoon, unfortunately knocked out. I will now go ahead and, yeah, here we are with some Marine air wing. They're putting cannon fire into these urban hexes. Now, the rules do specify in Tactical Combat Middle East that cannon fire from helicopters does not count as victory points, so I'm using that carefully. I'm not calling in airstrikes on actual Iraqi positions in towns, like bombs and missiles airstrikes. That is a huge victory point bonus to the Iraqi player. The Marine player has to be careful with using his big firepower units against developed areas. However, these artillery batteries that are deployed out here in the desert are just fine to get first pinned down by cannon fire from these F-18 Hornets, and then overrun by forward elements of Task Force Shepard once they're pinned down, so they don't get opportunity fire on me. Long story short, I'm really working here as the Marine player to shut down Iraqi artillery, because Iraqi artillery, let me tell you, is a threat. And if you read the primary source material, you'll also find that the Marines took Iraqi artillery on the day very seriously. Turn 3 continues to see things heat up all along the battlefront, especially now that the Marines have more or less shut down Iraqi attacks out of the west, out of the north, and especially out of the east. And the Marines are now on a general offensive. That's the good news. The bad news is that remaining Iraqi howitzers and 120mm mortars are continuing to inflict way too many Marine casualties. I'm not going to lie, the Marines have lost way too many units here in the first 3 turns of the game. They are well on their way to outright losing this game, even as they win the battle. To make a bad matter worse, a lot of these Iraqi 120mm mortars are well positioned here in urban hexes that represent oil refineries. So even if the Marines do call in airstrikes or off-board artillery to neutralize these threats, we're going to be handing the Iraqis a huge pile of victory points in the form of collateral damage. So yeah, not too happy about that. Turn 4 sees the Marines finally clear out the Iraqi support elements that were staged back here behind El Jaber Air Base, and then begin a pivot movement that finally breaks the Iraqi right wing. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. So these 2 hexes here saw some T-62s that were kind of the remnants of Iraqi 26 Armored Brigade. They were holding things up for a while until we finally managed to call in some Cobras and some Hornets to pin them down with the last of their missiles and also some autocannon fire. And once they were pinned down, this allowed Marine tanks to make overrun attacks. I did take a dispersed tank unit. That's going to be 2 more Iraqi victory points. Not so hot about that. But everybody else has more or less turned the Iraqi wing here. Task Force Shepard has now sort of joined the advance with a general advance out of the west into the east. Again, we've sort of shattered the Iraqi 26 Armored Brigade and thus the Iraqi right wing. They're pretty much out of gas at this point. And now it's just going to be up to what the Marines can do for the rest of the battle, extending further to the east. Turn 5, and the game is now officially halfway over. So what we're looking at so far is Task Force Shepard with a converging attack out of the west, and especially Task Force Ripper with a converging attack out of the south. And they've more or less wiped out the remnants of Iraqi 26 Armored Brigade. Here's where they used to be. There's pretty much nothing left. What this does is it opens the door for more Marine armor and helicopter gunships to begin rolling up the Iraqi backfield, extending further to the east. So finally some good news there for the Marine player. What we're looking at here with these 3 LAV platoons is that Bravo company of Task Force Shepard that I was mentioning earlier. These guys were more or less left out of the Battle of Khafji and the initial engagements on G-Day, and now on G+1 they were being redeployed to the vanguard of Task Force Shepard, the absolute spearhead of the whole 1st Marine Division. They were really excited about that. They were anxious to get into the war finally. They were halfway to their deployment point when the commanding general of 1st Marine Division stopped them on the road and says, "You're going to be redeployed, you're going to defend my headquarters instead." The Marines of the Bravo Company were not terribly happy about that. They appealed to their colonel. Nevertheless, they followed orders. As fate would have it, though, they were pretty much right in the crosshairs of that main Iraqi attack out of the north. So they wanted to get into the thick of it, they got into the thick of it, and they're definitely in the thick of it here. For our review of turn 6, I've gone ahead and pre-zoomed in our view here to only the northeastern quarter of the battlefield, but I think from here on it's going to be the part that really matters. So one of the first things that the Marines have had to do is I finally had to break down and call in some artillery on these Iraqi mortar positions. It really sucked to have to do that because the damage that artillery inflicted, 1/2 of those points counts toward the Iraqis as victory points in the form of collateral damage. So again, a bitter pill to swallow, but I had to do it. To shut down those 120mm mortars that were just causing way too many Marine casualties. Our developing attacks here on the Iraqi wing, on the Iraqi flank, we're continuing to roll up the Iraqi line here. Task Force Ripper, Task Force Shepard, happy about that. Down here, Task Force Papa Bear is facing a pretty tough nut to crack. We have the remnants of 22nd Mechanized Brigade. They have holed up inside all these urban hexes here of Subasaya, as well as the orchards that extend here to the southwest. So a lot of infantry that's going to have to get cleared out of there. Not so happy about that. Now there are some weapons that do not cause collateral damage. Heavy machine guns, automatic cannon, infantry close assaults, things like that. So those are the kind of attacks that I'm really going to have to use going forward to clear out the rest of these Iraqi hexes and close out the game. Zooming in again here for turn 7, we see that the big street battle down here in Subasaya is now underway in earnest. And we'll take a closer look at that in just a second. Meanwhile, I've left Task Force Shepard more or less back here in sort of a mop-up operation role. We're going to go ahead and continue to clear out the last of these Iraqi command vehicles and support assets that are bottled up in these oil refinery axes, because Task Force Shepard, the vehicles in that unit, have a lot of the kind of weapons that don't cause collateral damage. So I'm using Task Force Shepard and a lot of my light armor to sort of mop up these light Iraqi units out of these objective hexes without actually handing the Iraqis unnecessary victory points in the form of collateral damage. So again, we see the same kind of thing over here. The cannon on my Cobras, as well as some more of my light armor. My actual tanks, meanwhile, are now into Jaber-Burqan oil fields proper, and we are engaging and overrunning any Iraqi unit that isn't in an oil refinery hex. Again, because a Marine 105mm tank cannon will cause collateral damage. Surprise, surprise. So zooming in here a little bit on the where the actual main battle is now taking place, it's sort of coalesced into this town. Yeah, this is where things get very hairy and very up close and personal. Again, this hex here used to have 3 or I think it may be even 4 Iraqi units in there. Again, about 30 to 40 men per unit. So that's, I say 4 units there, 1, 2, 3, 4 units here, 1, 2, 3 units there. That's 11 units times 40, 440 men on what Flames of War would consider an 8x8 15mm table. Yeah, that's a Flames of War table for your ass right there. So that's when you see those kind of games here. But again, zooming out to the larger scope of the broader battle space, that's where, you know, most modern miniature games that are available on the market today start to break down. Because you got engagement ranges that are 20, 30 hexes. That's 20 or 30 15mm tables away. However, those games definitely do still have a place when it comes down to the up-close and personal knife fights that happen all too frequently, even in Modern Warfare. For turn 8, we're going to go ahead and start off really zoomed in. We're looking at just the absolute extreme northeast corner of the entire map board here. This view covers just 3% of the hexes on the total battlefield. So yeah, we're really zoomed in here. And we're looking at pretty much, you know, mopping up operations. The Marine M60s are pretty much overrunning whatever's left that they can get to, no worries there. Here where we have some last-ditch Iraqi command vehicles, they're now pinned down by cannon fire from Marine Cobras here from 500 meters away. Meanwhile, Marine infantry companies are dismounting their rifle platoons, and they're going to go ahead and close assault into those refineries and capture those pinned down Iraqi commanders. So no collateral damage, no counter fire because they are kind of pinned down already. So no additional casualties, no collateral damage. It's just pretty much clean up the battlefield. Further to the south, we are also looking at, again, some more pinned down Iraqi units in oil refineries and more Marines that are going to attack in the close assault. Meanwhile, Marine tanks have occupied objective hexes. Everything's, pretty much starting to calm down, except down here, again, in those few remaining urban hexes. I could easily call in artillery and just blow these fools into the middle of next week with like less than a die roll. Unfortunately, that would be a huge pile of collateral damage points awarded to the Iraqi player. So this is where the game almost, sort of forces you to think like a real-life commander and not just blow away the enemy with your most powerful weapons. Of course you have the most powerful weapons. You're the Americans in the Gulf War. However, you're not always at liberty to use all that firepower. So I'm using Marine armor. They kind of rolled in here. They spotted the Iraqis, and once the Iraqis were spotted in all of these, I say were, they're not there anymore. Once they were spotted in all of these town and tree hexes, that's when the machine gun fire, the LAV cannon fire, all that stuff kind of went in there and chewed up some of these last remaining Iraqi armor units and light artillery in the form of 82mm mortar batteries. No worries there. Down here in the south, the Marines made a bit of an attack on foot, covered by these SSC markers. These are smoke shell concentrations. So the Marines had some 81mm mortars that they called in, some smoke screens that allowed them to make a rush in here with plenty of platoons of Marine infantry. Let me go ahead and get a Marine infantry platoon there. Alright, I'll zoom in a little bit. Marine infantry and also Marine engineers. So Marine infantry is bad enough. They're very powerful units. They organize in very large platoons, very well trained, top-notch weapons. And then we have Marine engineers, which have the same basic attack values, you notice. However, because they're engineers, they also have this additional ability to give a huge bonus for close assaults. So here we see some of the last close assaults that went in there, and yeah, it didn't take long. Once we finally got to grips with them, these Iraqi infantry, they did pin down some American Marines, specifically those engineers. They pinned down one of my tank platoons up here, so they're still earning victory points, I won't lie. But yeah, the fat lady started to sing here, so that's that. So by the end of turn 9, we're zooming out here again for a full battlefield view. We're going to go ahead and call it, because the Iraqis are effectively tabled. There's exactly one Iraqi counter left on the table. So the Marines have now taken all 5 objective hexes. They've accomplished their mission, but did they win the game? Believe it or not, no. The Marines have formally and officially lost this game. I know it looks crazy because the Iraqis are beyond tabled. Here are all the Iraqi kills we see stacked up in ranks 5 across. Again, it's insane. 174 platoons, sections, or artillery batteries. That's the bulk of, that's the equivalent of a full division. When was the last time you saw a real division on a gaming table? Well, you've seen it now, and it's all on fire. So they did manage to destroy the equivalent of 12 platoons of Marine forces, which is insanely high. The Marines made a couple of really bad mistakes earlier in the game, and the Iraqis got some pretty good die rolls. The Iraqi player can totally win this game, even if he loses the battle. So the Iraqis have dispersed 29, or pinned down 29 American units. The Americans did call in some artillery to clear out some of those things. That's the bulk of the Iraqi victory points here, is American artillery damage. And then again, they get 5 points per kill because they did not kill any American tanks, or they did not kill any American helicopters, or God forbid, Hornets. It's just Amtraks and infantry platoons and 1 TOC of LAV-25s. So yeah, they wind up with a grand total of 179 points when you add that all up. Again, the Marines have destroyed 174 platoons. So we have a grand total of 179 to 174. Believe it or not, the Iraqis win this game by 5 points. It's an insane result, but again, that's what happens when you look at the asymmetrical warfare, and especially asymmetrical wargaming. War is never fair, and so a realistic war game should never really be fair, or at least the forces on the table shouldn't be fair. It's up to the scenario designer to make the game fair by giving the weaker side easier victory conditions, and that's what we saw here. So that's going to wrap us up for today, everyone. Thanks very much for checking us out. Thanks very much for all your support here on the Sitrep podcast. and we'll be in touch with everybody very soon.